Well, good evening, everyone. It's an honour to be with you all this evening and celebrate and encourage each other. And encouraging each other is so important in educational ministry. And so I'm going to share a little bit about myself, how God called me to Christian education. And then I have a little bit of a message about that the Lord has brought to me, how we can work together to raise godly adults. When I take my glasses off like this, that's never a good sign because that means I can't see the clock. I want to start by diving into Matthew 28 in a verse called the Great Commission. And Jesus came to them and said to them, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always and to the end of the age." This morning we heard about the most important commandment from the book of Mark, and that message was preached by Dr. Jones, and it fits so beautifully with what I'm going to share. And I'm sitting there this morning thinking, wow, God is in it all. I just want to share just a little bit about me. So I recently moved from Tacoma, which is just near Seattle, in Seattle, Washington. I was there for 5.5 years with my family and I served as head of school in Life Christian Academy, which is a church-sponsored school just like this. My accent gives me away a little bit that I'm not native to Washington. And so I moved from Australia with my family to lead Life Christian after serving as head of school for 10 years in one of the leading Christian schools in Australia. So who am I? I say first and foremost, I'm a Christian educator who loves the Lord, and I'm someone who believes that the next generation, believes in that next generation. This is a key part of my biblical worldview, and you'll hear me talk about that term, biblical worldview. I grew up in a Christian home, and I was taught to read God's word. I was taught how to pray. I was taught the value of daily devotions from a really young age by my parents, and this has really shaped Felicity and my parenting. My parents, well, they never ever took the foot off the gas in spiritually nurturing me. But this did look a little bit different at different stages in life, and I'm really pleased that it was that way. Importantly, my wife's experience was just the same with her upbringing. So I'm married to Felicity for 23 years. Her and Yanni send their apologies for not being here tonight. They dropped our second daughter, who is a sophomore at TCU. She had to move in yesterday. So they are just coming through Jackson just a little while ago on their way back, and they couldn't be here tonight. I have our eldest son is Jake. So Jake is a senior at Grand Canyon University, and he's studying honors business management and is the student body vice president. So Gabby's studying physical therapy. I mentioned about her at TCU, go Frogs, and that sorts out the Bama-Auburn thing straight away. So she's on a track scholarship, but triathlon is her number one sport, and she's been selected in US national teams, a swag of medals in nationals in Australia and in the United States, and a part of the Olympic development squad. And Yanni is our youngest, and he is going to be a junior at Briarwood, and he's an avid tennis player. So Felicity and I, most of all, we are blessed to have 3 kids who love the Lord, and we also have a really, really cute new puppy dog that we just got a few days ago. So I want to share a little bit about my call to Christian education, because this has been something that's really powerful, and the authority of that move or call for me to Christian education has really influenced my life. I was fortunate to have 11 years as a professional tennis player traveling around the world, and I'd graduated from college. I'd had a science degree in genetic engineering and microbiology. I have a computer science degree in programming and computer security, and then I have a pure high school education degree in science and technology instruction. Out of a cohort that started out of 500 students, I was the only graduate that came through with that science computing degree, and that's an important point. While on the tour, at the end of my time, I received a phone call from a head of school at a small Christian school in Tasmania, and I have absolutely no idea how he knew what continent I was in. My parents, they had no idea which continent I was in, but I used to keep a house in Reno, Nevada, and share that house with my sister who was playing tennis at UNR. He offered me a job as a PE teacher. Now, bear in mind the qualifications that I had, and athletic director. And I didn't know what to do about that, but I had a stirring that this was going to be the end of my time playing tennis. And so when he called me, I said to him, you can call me back at exactly the same time tomorrow, and I'm going to pray about this. I'm going to bring this before the Lord, and I'm going to see if this is what it's meant to be, because I really had a stirring that that's what God had wanted for me. And I had a bad practice, my arm hurt, and I just really felt that this was the prompting I needed to listen to God. So 2 weeks later, without anything written down or any agreement, I turn up at 8 o'clock in the morning to teach physical education and be the athletic director at this little Christian school. Now, in the hierarchy of schools in Australia, we have the grammar schools, which are really prestigious. They pay a lot of money. Then you have the Catholic schools, the public schools, and then the poor Christian schools. And the difference probably between those, if we're talking money, is probably $100,000 in the grammar schools for a first-year teacher, someone with my qualifications, and in the Christian schools, it's about $40,000. So it's a big difference, and my friends just thought I was crazy to go to Christian schools, but that's where God called me to, and I met Felicity at that Christian school, and we started our kids off in Christian education at that school. So God called me to Christian education, and by God's grace, He has blessed me in that ministry. The words of Matthew 28, they have given my work purpose, and they have been so influential in me in that drive, and I hope they are for you as well. I enjoy the opportunity to teach children to love the Lord, and as an administrator to provide opportunity for those to be enriched and spread by others. I love to work to a standard, and from Colossians 3, 23 and 24, that call to excellence has been something that really motivates me. Whatever you do, work heartedly as for the Lord and not for men. And that's been such an inspiration to do everything for the Lord and to do it with excellence. Something to consider about Christian education is that Christian schools and Christian education are not necessarily one and the same thing. Some Christian schools are a lot better at Christian education than others. And history has shown us that a loss of biblical emphasis leads to a school that started out as a Christian school can simply become a private school, and Christian in its name, or Christian by heritage. And it starts with the slippery slide. It starts at some point with egress and not holding firm to those values. So let's define Christian education. Now, I was so blessed this week to have been able to sit on a few sessions about Christian education with Dr. Blackman and Mr. Holland as they've prepared our new teachers and our faculty coming in together. And I know some speakers who can be here next year. Wow, they are sharp people. But let's define Christian education. So Christian education is making disciples who are growing in fulfilling the cultural mandate, the Great Commandment, and the Great Commission for God's glory and the good of others. That's a really big statement. That's a really big statement. So let's just put that a little bit more simply. Christian education, it's discipleship. We know that discipleship takes relationships, and trust is a really important ingredient in relationships. Knowing whose world this is also helps us direct our discipleship. So Psalms, they shape our thoughts and understandings on this question as to whose world this is. In Psalm 24, verse 1, "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and the world and those who dwell in it therein. And from Psalm 78, verses 5 to 8, he established the testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers to teach to their children, that the next generation may know them, even the children yet unborn, and arise and tell them to their children, so that they should set their hope in God and not forget the words of God, and to keep his commandments. Growing up today is tough. And anybody young who's here, don't let anybody old tell you that growing up when they were younger was much harder. It's way harder growing up today. The challenges, they're unique. When we grew up, we were being educated for jobs that already existed. And today, as educators sitting in this room, we're educating children for jobs that don't even exist yet. In fact, research shows that 80% of our students who are currently in school now, when they graduate and they've been through college and they go off and they go into the workforce, 80% of these people will be doing jobs that don't even exist yet. And that's a unique and an interesting dynamic. We're educating kids for a world that doesn't exist yet. So that really makes us pause and think about education a little bit more deeply. Not only is being a student more difficult, hand in hand with that goes being a teacher. It gets harder and harder every year. And one of our responsibilities as teachers is to serve his children. And it's hard, it's tiring, and sometimes it's just not fair. Despite this, we have a responsibility. And even though it's tough, as educators and as Christians, we can't do enough because of what God has done for us. We're charged with the responsibility to care for God's creation, and his children are a very special part of that. We're partnering with a great discipling church like Briarwood and with believing parents to shape children to be image bearers of Christ. So what does the term image bearers of Christ mean? Well, this is a much deeper look into the heart of Christian education, and that is the fruit of intentional discipleship. So image bearers, what are image bearers? Image bearers, they're active and they're purposeful, they're rational, they're creative, they're moral, they're free and responsible. The two go hand in hand because being free and irresponsible don't work together. Being free and responsible. They're faithful. They're able to exercise and have dominion. They're social, they're relational, they're loving, merciful, and dependent. They're attributes that we draw from the scriptures of image bearers of Christ. And these are all attributes that are evidence or fruit of a biblical-based education. So no school is perfect, and neither are we at Briarwood. But we commit that we'll always be working on getting better in discipling image bearers of Christ in our students. A Christian school can cultivate these really, really well when truly working in partnership with parents. And this takes a two-way trusting relationship. And that's one of the unique nuances of homeschool, where we have homeschool who the children and the parents, they actually really love each other. The battle for the soul of America is being fought out in the arena of worldviews. By worldviews, I mean our interpretation of reality and our view of life. And the classroom has become the number one battlefield for this. I saw Mr. Holland share a slide for the new teachers training earlier last week, and describing the myth of neutrality in education. And this was a quote by R.C. Sproul, and it reads as this: "There is no such thing as a neutral education. Every education, every curriculum has a viewpoint. That viewpoint either considers God in it or it does not. To teach children about life and the world in which they live without reference to God is to make a statement about God. That screams a statement. The message is either that there is no God or that God is irrelevant. Either way, the message is the same. There is no God. An irrelevant God is the same as no God at all. If God is, then he must be relevant to his entire creation. Society is in turmoil, and this is no surprise. We have a God of order, and that's why the turmoil and turbulence of the chaos that we see makes us feel uncomfortable. They diminish our parental rights and implement destructive ideologies and psychologically abusive practices. They teach racism through critical race theory. They sexualize children. They dumb down education through revised history, pseudoscience, and lowered standards. The damage this does to our children has become obvious. And with the rise of physical violence, suicide, drug and alcohol abuse, gender dysphoria, and sexual confusion. This community may be currently sheltered from some of this, but liberal, progressive, and crazy, they're coming to town. It's only a matter of time. Coming from the liberal left coast, I saw the hearts and the souls of our children attacked every day. I don't have a woke bone in my body, so living there was a challenge. The secular worldview has 7 key tenets, and I disagree with every single one of these, but I want to mention some of these for context. Firstly, some of these tenets. God does not exist. We're cosmic accidents. Hope is only found in scientific discovery. Religion and science are opposed to each other. Science is based on fact, while religion is based on faith, fear, and ignorance. Morality is relative. In other words, what is wrong for me may not be wrong for you. There is no absolute standard of right and wrong because there is no absolute lawgiver. The Bible is full of errors and irrelevant to modern life. And as believers, we can see the problem with those 7 tenets. The college environment, that is even more aggressively anti-Christian. Late secular professor and philosopher Richard Rorty said, "Parents who send their children to college should recognize that as professors, we're going to go right on trying to discredit you in the eyes of your children, trying to strip your fundamentalist religion community of dignity, trying to make your views seem silly rather than discussable." You may not realize this, but studies suggest that nearly 80% of Christian young people who attend a secular college abandon their Christian faith by the time they graduate. 80%. The Christian school teachers have the support of their school and Christian curriculum. The homeschool parents have choice. The public school teachers have parameters within they must teach. And I really sense the complexities there. So let's shift gears slightly and talk about parenting and an opportunity that I see in this really, really important role. Our parenting, it needs to be intentional. You need to diligently consider a plan for everything you want your child to learn before they are released from your nest. I hope all parents think seriously about preparing your child for adulthood. And as you're the primary owners of this responsibilities on raising children to be godly adults, God blessed you with them. He charged you with that responsibility. And hopefully, as the school all knows, we hope they go home with you of an evening. And all the teachers said, amen. Far too parents have a biblical vision for parenting, and far fewer have a plan to implement it, which leads to all kinds of potential problems, missed opportunities, and a decrease in our effectiveness as parents. I also hope that the colleges that you send hope that you consider the colleges that you send your children to. As believers, if we were to be consistent and steadfast in what we set out to do, we wouldn't want our college-aged children influenced by non-believers. Teenagers are still impressionable. I've been working along parents now for over 25 years and have noticed that a few patterns with parents. And I just want to briefly mention 3 of those patterns. Firstly, we all want to succeed. We all desire to be good parents. And if I were to ask a parent, do you want to be a good parent? The answer would always be yes. If success was determined by desire alone, then we would have little to worry about. Nobody wants to be a bad parent, but it's not that easy. Secondly, we all believe we're doing a pretty good job as parents. Most parents, they believe they're doing a good job, and why wouldn't we? Our children dominate our thinking. We're concerned with every aspect of our child's well-being. We invest a significant amount of time, energy, and resources into our children. So we think, what more can I do? And thirdly, many of us lack a biblical, God-honouring plan. I haven't crossed paths with many parents who can clearly and consciously tell me the outcomes that they hope to achieve for their children's life before they leave the nest, and the plan to attain positive results. We may believe that we can get on with a minimum amount of effort and that we'll see success with the help of others, but this faulty thinking is a critical error and will surely catch us in the end. It's pretty easy to get busy parenting and going about our days with no real plan, no strategy, or not much thought at all, and on what will produce the long-term fruit for our children. For example, as a tennis coach, I've had the opportunity to coach a lot of people tennis. Kids never get good if I give them a court, a racket, and some balls and say, go out there and learn how to play tennis. It takes intentional instruction. It takes mentoring. It takes practice. It takes hard work. And all of those together with a plan that's scaffolded and developed make us good at something. The same applies to our parenting. The same applies to our teaching. It's never too early or too late to think about what needs to be done to launch a child into adulthood. Whether you've got 18 years until they leave the nest or just 1 year before they leave the nest. Now is a great time to chart that course to holistically disciple a child in the following areas: their firm foundations, Christ-like character development, biblical beliefs and worldview, spiritual growth, life skills, relational skills, work and money management, home management, personal care, and educational essentials. There's a lot there. That's why it takes a plan. God made us all to live in community and in communion with Him. And I'm a believer in Christian education. So why does Briarwood exist? Well, if we read Colossians 1:16, for by Him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authority, all things were created through Him and for Him. Briarwood Christian School, that exists for Him, and we're going to keep it that way. We'll work tirelessly, and we hope and pray that our students, firstly, will not just know God's standard, not just obey God's standard, but will love God's standard. There's a lot more that happens inside the walls of the classroom. There's a lot more that happens other than just inside the classroom. We've got so much that happens outside the classroom. The co-curricular and the curricula go hand in hand. And having a discipleship mindset teaches the Bible and God's love and standards, teaches students to think, to lead, to discern, and to love learning are so important. That's how we prepare our students for jobs that don't exist yet. These are called transferable life skills. We believe that the Bible provides the foundation for all education and all school operations, and that there also ought to be a theological underpinning behind all decisions. We're also leaving some of the things out of the classroom that don't belong in the classroom, and we should never bend on God's word. To my team, that's the approach. To my team, the way we approach this responsibility and how we shape image bearers for Christ is what will prove to differentiate Briarwood from any other Christian school. I heard the description of Briarwood Christian School as a Great Commission school with a great commandment culture. Go and make disciples of all nations while loving the Lord your God and your neighbours. Wow. This is the Briarwood way. And for me, the opportunity to enrich this fabulous transformational education already offered at Briarwood, I find that truly exciting. In bringing some of these thoughts together, what is the recipe for raising godly adults? You might ask the question, so why does Briarwood Church have Briarwood School? We all need to pull together if we're going to raise godly adults. That's all forms of educators, the church, the parents, and the school you work in. This helps us to be able to do this better. All work that brings his children closer to him is important in the eyes of the Lord, and all of our work is important and to be done in the eyes of the Lord. Proverbs 22 verse 6 says, "Train up a child in the way that he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it." That sounds like a godly adult to me. We all ought to teach from a biblical worldview. And sometimes, depending on where you work, that means you may need to stretch some perimeters. No matter what you teach, or no matter where you teach, we all should teach with the purpose that Christ gave us, to go about our work in a way that glorifies him. And we all ought pray relentlessly for our children, for our students, and for their families. The challenge that parents, the school, and their Christian school partners need to intentionally embark on is raising godly adults. And to achieve this, we all need each other. And that looks a little bit different for each and every one of us. We all need to trust each other, and we all need to help each other out and to encourage each other as champions for this one cause. So in summary, I'm seeking a promise from all educators. I'm seeking a promise from all educators, from all parents, and from all pastors. That group of people were really intentional. And the promise I'm seeking is this, that we're going to fix our eyes on Jesus, that we're going to focus on his word, and we're going to serve his children with all of our might, and we're going to do that no matter how hard it gets. This is my hope and prayer for us.